Before we go into the podcast, I want to just talk about a business that I've set up with my friend George. It is called the Podcast Introduction Group. So if you want to join and be able to be featured on 24 to 48 podcasts to be able to reach an amazing audience, this is the place you need to go to. Podcast, being a guest on podcasts, is automatically establishing you as an authority and is able to build your personal and professional brand. We handpick of a bank of podcasters that we have to be able to grow your business and brand. We do 100% of everything that needs to be done by my team. You do not need to lift a finger. You are able to expose yourself to new and relevant markets by going on other people's podcasts. You also are able to create brand loyalty. People will love listening to you and coming back to your products or services, and it's able to increase your revenue. So if you want to be able to get involved, you can sign up quickly, registered with an account manager. There's an onboarding call where we target the podcasts that you want to be on, the type that you want, whether it's entrepreneurship, business, health, fitness, whatever it is. We then match you to those podcasts and you can start your journey. We have regular catch-ups with our account managers, and Google ranks you when people search for you. So when people are searching for you, you're able to see your podcasts at the top of the list. So if you are interested in being a podcast guest on multiple podcasts, we are the place to go. If you go to podcastintroduction.com and go and register your details, we will have a quick call with you, match your podcast that you want to be on, and we can then start this process ASAP. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Back onto the podcast then. This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and people in their careers. We will delve into their journey to success, key life milestones, and go deep into their area of expertise. Get ready to learn from others' successes and failures. Today we have Joseph O'Connor, who is an author and executive coach. Hello, Joseph. How are you?
Hi, Mark. I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. So we're going to go through your your career and talk through some of your experience and your expertise. But as always, we start with your education. And the first thing that I saw was that you had a degree in anthropology. Why did you choose that as a starting degree?
Well, to be honest, I got into university to study physiology.
Okay.
But after about 2 or 3 weeks, the chemistry and physics were getting a little bit beyond me. So then, being in the science faculty, I thought, well, I like university. I want to stay. I want to get a degree. What is there? What can I do? And anthropology was in that university, London University. It was a science, so it was included in the science. So it was very interesting because it's about people and how they live, their politics, their religion, their economics. It was really fascinating.
It gave you a wide variety of sort of skills and knowledge, I assume.
It gave me a wide variety of knowledge. I'm not sure about skills, except insofar as to open my mind up as to how many different ways that human beings can live on this planet.
Yeah. That sounds fascinating. So moving on from anthropology, the other thing that was glaringly obvious when I was doing research was that you're a musician.
Oh, yes.
And you spent a time at the Royal Academy of Music as well.
Yes. Well, I did a teacher's LRAM. But, yeah, when I came out of college, I took a job for a couple of years, but it wasn't really anything I wanted to pursue. And I was a pretty good classical guitarist at that time because I'd started from the age of 11. So I started to be a professional performer and teacher of the classical guitar. And I did that for many years.
Because there seems to be, when I was doing the research, there seems to be a bit of a gap in the 1990s. And I wondered if it was music that you were pursuing or was there other other things that you were doing?
No, the way it worked was I did a lot of I was a musician. I was a performer. I was a teacher as well, and in as part of that, the couple of things that I kept stumbling over, which were very interesting for me because I was always interested in the psychology of it, was first of all the performance aspect. How people can be very good, skilled, but yet when they get in front of other people or some kind of stressful situation, or they feel they're being judged, then they don't do as well as they can do. Right. And I used to, I had some very good players, some concert players that I was teaching. And what I used to do is I used to get them sit down, say, take out your guitar, practice. I'll just get us a cup of coffee or something. And I would listen at the door. And that was the only way I knew how good they were. Because when I came back in, the judgment, the teacher, the situation, they're trying to prove something, they didn't play anywhere near as well. And I knew they could. And I also knew that their expertise had not suddenly disappeared in the 10 seconds it took for me to come into the room. Yeah. So there was clearly something else going on. And then, of course, we were immediately into coaching, because it doesn't matter whether you're performing music or arts or giving a sales presentation or a meeting. If it's important and you need to be your best, then, we need to know what's going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of the last sort of 20 years, there seems to be the theme of coaching and different types of coaching that you've been involved in. Why coaching? You've kind of hinted at it, that you wanted to help people and sort of enable them to be able to perform. I say perform, but you know what I mean, present themselves. And what was your sort of, why was coaching so appealing to you?
Well, I count myself very fortunate to have a career in music, because I think music is wonderful anyway, and it does put you at a very sharp point in terms of performance. So there you are on stage with a piece of wood and 6 strings strung across it. That's usually playing classical music, which has one right note at any time, and there'll be people who know that. So it's not jazz or improvisation. There's a performance going on, and that comes out of, one thing it comes out of is very good technique. So you learn in the guitar technique, in other words, how to move your fingers quickly and easily, so that you don't have to worry about it. You learn the skill so you can forget it. And then you can use, in this case, the guitar, to express what you want to express, that beauty, whatever it is, that what's important. You don't want technique getting in your way. So that's one part of a teacher and a trainer. But then, of course, the other part is the part I referred to. Even if you've got really good technique, you've still got to be able to use it. And your worst enemy is yourself, because in all your little self, talking to yourself, exactly what to say to trip yourself up. We all know our own weaknesses intimately. So it's what's called the inner game. So I got interested in the inner game, Timothy Galway's great book, which was kind of the start of coaching back in the 70s, and kind of went on for there. So it came quite naturally. I did quite a bit of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. I wrote a number of books on that, of which the first one was learning music and guitar, music NLP. And then I thought that NLP, coaching is a wonderful application of NLP and many other things. I'm not saying NLP is coaching. It isn't. There's a lot of things that go into coaching, and coaching has its own methodology, its own ideas and how you go about it. But NLP is a pretty good start to that. Yeah? So when I heard about coaching, this was 1990, middle of the 90s. It said, yes, please. This seems to be exactly what how I can use everything that I know, including NLP, in order to help a lot of interesting people do what they do well in the best way that they can.
And so you co-founded and is director of the International Coaching Community, which trains coaches worldwide regarding skills and ethics. So what made you then decide to start up your own business and be a co-founder of that community?
Well, this was, I guess, around about 2000. And at the time, I was living in São Paulo in Brazil with my wife and partner, Andrea. And we, certainly in Brazil and around about that time, in many countries, coaching was not well developed at all in terms of organizations or skills or methodologies. There was a lot of different sorts of things going on, all of which were kind of called coaching because coaching was kind of the new thing. So it was a bit of a Wild West in that sense. And we wanted to start something that had some substance to it. And we chose the name International Coaching Community for those three words were carefully chosen. International, because coaching is international. You know, I've coached in 20, 30 countries. We have over 60 countries representative in the ICC. Coaching just goes across cultures and across geography. So it's international. Coaching, well, that's the obvious one in the middle, helping people the best they can be in many ways, helping them.
But let's, before you go any further, you say coaching. So there are different types of coaches. You might have a life coach, you might have a business coach, you might have a sales and marketing coach. What area for the ICC does it really embed, or does it embed across lots of different areas?
Well, I would say that rather than describe them as types of coaching, you could describe them as the area of that the coaching skills applies to.
Okay.
Right? So coaching skills are the foundational coaching skills of listening, of empathy, of asking questions, these sorts of things, of clarifying the goals and the values and the understanding of the client. These can be applied in any area. So for the ICC, we started with that. We started with your foundational coaching skills that you can then apply in any area. And then we started some other courses as well, particularly around team coaching, executive coaching. So that's how that started. But I do want to say something about community, because community is an important word. It's a word for a group of people who want to be together, who are bound together by values. And that was always very important for us in terms not only of competence and expertise in coaching, but also the sincerity, the ethics, the values.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And it says, when I was doing the research, it says you've trained 8,000 coaches. I'm assuming that number's probably increased, does it?
Well, the ICC has certified, I think, about 16,000 at the moment.
Right.
I don't know if I personally trained 8,000 of those. I doubt it. These things get exaggerated in the telling, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, but I certainly spent some time, and I've trained many coaches in many countries.
Right. And then executive coach at Lambert UK. I'm seeing a trend here. You getting involved, either starting these businesses or joining these organisations to help a variety of different coaches. Is that what happened at Lambert?
Well, Lambert is it's our company that does training and coaching and consultancy in various ways. But the theme you describe, I can identify with, because I like to do what I like to do. So I love to do coaching and training and writing too. So what I do is I look for the gaps. I look for the gap in it can be in the market, but the gap in the knowledge. So in 2000, there was a lot going on, but coaching was definitely on the up, and it was an important gap that needed something there. More recently, in coaching, neuroscience is a gap. There's not a lot of application and knowledge of the incredible advances in neuroscience and our knowledge of the brain that's come in. Now that's increasing, but it's important. So that interested me. So I'm very interested in many things, and then I like to kind of go into them, try to integrate them, and then make an offering of them in some way.
Because we're going to go into the brain and the importance of the brain when we get into the expertise section. But it's interesting you said, so you're the director of Neuroscience Coaching Centre. Mm-hmm. The application of neuroscience in coaching, as you said, is something that's not very well developed.
Right.
We've got lots of people who are neuroscientists that are doing MRIs and sort of start studying the brain and the activity of the brain and where in the brain that things are doing. How did you come up with that, but what was your trigger to say, did you start reading about neuroscience and then see an application to coaching? How did you make that fusion between the two different areas?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show. Meet the future of healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health. Actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match you, your disease, with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, meet the future of healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
Well, originally, I got interested because I did a degree in kind of behavioral, don't know what you would call it, deception detection, which was extremely interesting. And a lot of that was to do with how the brain works and the neuroscience of that. So I got very interested in that. And then, being a coach, I saw, well, there's a lot of stuff here about how the brain works and it's growing all the time. They need to do something about this. So I actually went to New York, and I had a series of brain scans, not because I was ill, but because I was interested. Start with yourself, and see where it takes you. And I thought it was fascinating, and I did learn a lot. It clarified for me many things about how I think and how I act from that. But at the same time, of course, there is a divide between the domain of the brain, which is made of matter, and, you don't coach a brain literally. But at the same time, the brain works in certain ways, which we're discovering, that are not always what we think or would like them to be, and we need to take that into account. And knowing some neuroscience research and the models that they have can very much help us as coaches to refine the models that we have.
That's fascinating. So let's move on.
Sorry, just want to say a couple of things, because the danger in neuroscience, which I've desperately tried to avoid as Scylla and Charybdis, is first of all, neuroscience as learning Latin names of all the brain parts. That doesn't make you a better coach. It can be interesting, but it doesn't. And then the other thing, the other extreme, is a lot of very general sorts of claims about left brain and right brain people. Right. Where you take the science and then you generalize it out of existence in order to try to do something. And that's a danger as well. So I've tried to make the path between the two in terms of using neuroscience, and the subtitle of the book was Practical Applications of Neuroscience to Coaching.
Right. And I suppose as a layman myself, it's quite difficult when you're talking about very complicated things like neuroscience. And I'm assuming the reason why we get that simplification of left brain and right brain is because for people like me, keeping it simple that we can understand those areas. How have you done that in your latest book? 19 books you've written, which is amazing. Your latest book, Coaching the Brain. How have you done that? How have you traversed between writing a meaningful, detailed book, but equally making it accessible for people to read as well?
That's magic. That's just magic. I go into the pentangle in the garden and wave the magic wand. It's something I try to do. I think that it's, as a writer, it's really important that if you've got something important to communicate and you believe in it, then it's your responsibility, as it were, to take the hard work out of the research so that the reader doesn't have to go through the same sort of battles. So I write about what I'm interested in and what I want to learn about. I don't write from being, an authority on it. I'm not. I'm a learner. And in learning, I think that I'm able to iron out some of the difficulties that people meet when they come across this stuff, and then hopefully put it down in a clear way so that they can take it and use it.
So you're not. So you wouldn't say you're an authority on neuroscience and coaching. I'm pushing you a little bit on this because I find it absolutely fascinating that you're saying that you write books that you're interested in. You're not the authority on the area. That's quite.
Yeah. Okay, so let's put it this way. Authority. I'm an author. Okay, so I write. That's one word. Author is also has a meaning around creator. You're the author of your experience. You create it out of various things. You create books out of various things. That's the meaning of the author. Now, when you start to get an authority, that's when people start to look up to you for answers because you have some expertise in that area. So that's fine. I'm not going to claim that I have all the answers, and I'm very comfortable in saying I don't know, and I don't. But I hope that what I've done and what I've studied and what I've trained and put into writing is helpful and accurate for many people.
Absolutely. What's your writing practice? What do you do when you're writing a book? What's your routine?
I don't have a routine. I have a deadline. This book has to be finished by this time. So I'm not well disciplined in that sense. It's not like 2 hours a day or 1,000 words or every morning or anything like that. A week can go by or more where I don't write anything, and then the next week I could write 2-3 chapters. A lot depends on what's going on, and of course there's a lot of research to do as well. So you have to let it settle, see how it integrates, and then move forward. So it tends to be kind of fits and starts.
Right. Okay. Relating back to your coaching and your expertise in this area, how important do you think emotional intelligence is in business?
It's critical, absolutely critical. In business, of course, there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of procedures, there's a lot of ideas, but in the end, you are a person with emotions, and you're dealing with people with emotions. And you can argue all you like and use all the technology all you like, but if you don't get on with the person, there's going to be a problem. Yeah, that's what happens in companies. The problems are, a lot of them are impersonal. Personal, which then generates a lot of other types of problems where things go wrong. So in terms of emotional intelligence, let me say a couple of things. The original metaphor for thinking and emotions goes back to Plato, where you have a chariot and a charioteer and a black horse and a white horse. And the black horse is emotions, and that's always trying to tear you off in the wrong direction. And the white horse is intellect, and it's very going along nicely. You can see what Plato favoured. But and then you're the charioteer. You have to kind of control the horses, but it's not really like that. As far as the brain's concerned, the whole thing is just a system, a mess, a whole togetherness. There's no thinking without some emotion involved in terms of feeling and meaning. and there's no emotion without some kind of thinking involved. So they always go together. And when we talk about decision making, it becomes pretty clear that decisions are made primarily by our emotional centers, rather taking into account all the cognitive knowledge that comes in. But in the end, it's emotional. So the emotional intelligence in terms of knowing your emotions, being able to manage them, being aware of other people's emotions and being able to manage those is really crucial.
Do you think that's an area that executives, leaders still struggle with? Because if you go back 20 or 30 years, the leader has changed a great deal over these last 20 years. 20 years ago, the leader was like a fearless leader at the front, sort of directing where we were going. Now there's lots of nuances and lots of different types of leaders and what they prioritize. But do you think emotional intelligence is seen by leaders as important still?
I hope so. We've certainly moved a long way away from the charismatic leader leading the troops from the front, as it were. But I think what's interesting about a leader, unless you have some definite type of hierarchical authority that other people will obey regardless, is that leaders aren't leaders without followers. You know, if someone says, "Come on, follow me," and nobody does, they're not a leader. Yeah. So in that sense, you have to provide a vision. You have to communicate. You have to tell a story that makes sense. You have to connect with people in order to be a leader, and then that happens. Yeah. Apart from the obvious hierarchical ones. So I think there's a lot of, I think it's becoming I think leaders are more and more seeing how important this is. And it's factoring more and more into how they think about leadership and how they behave.
So I'm just going to, this is completely off the cuff and I've not prepared this, but I'm just interested with an example of someone like Elon Musk as a leader, as a person who's defining technology. Do you think that from your neurological side and from your coaching side, do you think he is closer to what we now describe as a modern leader?
An interesting question. I mean, he's worth a lot of money. He's a visionary. He's head of a very large company. And people pay attention to what he says. So you have this, the technology aspect, which is, of course, more and more important now. So he's head of one of those really big technology companies. Yeah. He's very wealthy. And he has a vision. So, you've got some elements of leadership there. Yeah. Now, I don't know him, and I don't follow him, and I don't really know how he is getting on with people is another matter. So I think it's important to remember that leadership is a composite of all sorts of qualities, and if you're really strong in some, you can get away with not having very much in others. It'll work. Steve Jobs particularly.
Yeah, and that's where I was sort of going towards the whole sort of Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, who are, as you say, visionary. They're transformative leaders. They are people that people listen to. But I suppose my sort of angle was that they're sort of like Steve Jobs, for example, wasn't a particularly nice person. An absolute visionary in technology wasn't a nice person. Do you think that type of leader is becoming less relevant than, because I'm thinking of is like people that are participative as leaders. They're part of the team. They're not just standing at the front. There does seem to be more of a shift towards that type of leader. So for that sort of person that you would shout at their staff, is that occurring less and less, or am I making assumptions here where there probably aren't assumptions to be made?
I don't know. I think it's a really interesting question and quite complicated. Yeah. I think that there's still a place for leaders to shout at people, but they've got to be very careful who they shout at. and what the reason for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. A leader who is perhaps a leader needs to appeal to many different sorts of people. So a leader needs to be, in some senses, a chameleon. They need to be very clear about what they believe and what they are, but they must be able to deal with very different sorts of people in a way that makes those very different sorts of people feel completely understood and willing to move along. So that's one thing. So I think I really don't know. I think there's many different aspects involved, and of course, there's always that almost random element of what happens in the market. For example, you take Steve Jobs as an example. So, visionary leader, very successful, wonderful company, fantastic. Now, so Steve Jobs, great leader. Okay, now supposing Steve Jobs doesn't change. He still has his visions. He still shouts at people. He's still the person he was. But there was some technological breakthrough in another area, and Apple went down and down and down and down and down while he was leader. Then, 10 years later, everybody goes, Steve Jobs, not such a great leader, he didn't really get anywhere, kept shouting at people. He should have been nicer or whatever. You can plug in anything into that, because we tend to also define leadership by success after the fact. And then we take the qualities and actions of that person at the time very much in context. And certainly now, with technology changing so much and the ability to just turn over companies overnight, we take people in a context that do certain things, and if they're successful, great leadership. Yeah. Okay. Yes, absolutely fine. But doesn't guarantee that if you copy what they do, you're going to be a great leader in another context, in another company 5 years later. It's going to be different.
And equally, it's like history is written by the winners. Because the company still exists and is being incredibly successful now, we still eulogize Steve Jobs as an amazing leader. So I do think that there's that as well. Yeah. Right, moving on. Let's take another tack. So, how is your brain a prediction machine?
Well, it seems like what we need. We need some kind of stability in life, right? A random world would be impossible, and we know that when people feel they have no control over anything that's going on, they get highly stressed and sometimes mentally ill. So it's very important that we have some kind of stability and we can predict what's going to happen. And this is basically what the brain does. So we have experience. I like to say the brain is an organ for converting experience into nerve cells. And then we have this experience and we learn from that. And what we learn is that if I do this, this happens. If I jump out the window, I'll fall a long way and hurt myself, in the extreme example. If I talk to someone like this, then this will happen. If I do this, et cetera, et cetera. So it's if then, if then, if then. And we test and we get a basis of experience that goes, this seems to work. And that's the prediction, in the sense. I predict that if I talk like this to somebody, then they will be more willing to follow what I say. Now, that may not happen, in which case we have to update our predictions, and we always happen to update our predictions. So you talk to someone, or you give a class, or you give a coaching session, or a meeting, or whatever it is, in the way that you predict is going to be successful, because it has in the past, and it isn't. Now, then you go, okay, what went wrong? Well, nothing really went wrong. Your prediction was based on what you knew, and you did the best that you could. You need to think, okay, so what was different about this? How do I need to update my prediction about how I approach a similar meeting next time? So this is then about updating our learning all the time. So that's what the brain is doing. It's making those type of predictions.
So what's more powerful with this prediction machine that's at the top of my head, experience or coaching?
Well, you can't avoid experience.
No, but so this, I hear from sort of thought leaders and sort of like inspirational sort of coaches and businessmen. They say, learn from my mistakes.
Oh, okay.
And you don't need to go through the struggles I did. But what is actually more powerful for the individual, going through those times of struggle, or actually having a coach that can sort of circumvent those struggles and get you to the place potentially faster?
Well, there's a place for both. I don't know that a coach will magically ease the way forward so that you never have conflicts or struggles. You do need the experience. You've got to go and do your hours. Just like I had to play the guitar for a number of hours. The teacher channeled and showed me best practice and helped me from a place of having done that, made mistakes and could help me. But I still had to do it. So experience, absolutely, but it's not just any old experience. The old saying that some people have the same year's experience for 20 years, and they actually only have 1 year experience. And someone else, they have a different experience over 20 years. So you've got to diversify the experience, and it's got to be an experience that you can learn from. In other words, if it's too easy, you don't learn a lot. If it's too difficult, you don't learn a lot either. It's got to be, just right, like Goldilocks. And one of the things that a coach can help a person with is almost designing experience in that Goldilocks way.
How is it for you, the difference between coaching an executive of a large corporate versus an entrepreneur?
What, different from me coaching them?
Yeah, from your coaching perspective, how do you approach them differently?
Well, I wouldn't say I approach them differently. Of course, I don't treat them the same, and I'll have certain expectations. I won't be able to completely drop all my expectations about the sorts of issues that they're going to bring up. But at the same time, I would hope that I would sit down and there's a person, there's a human being in front of me, and they want to talk about something that is bugging them, something that isn't working. And I'm going to listen, and I'm going to help them as best I can. And for the CEO of a big company and an entrepreneur in a small company, those are likely to be different sorts of issues, but many of them are the same. Working with teams, work-life balance, making decisions. It's only the content or the size of the particular issue that's different. It's not the dynamic.
Right. Because they're the same components in all businesses, isn't there? Whether you've got thousands of people or whether you've got 20 people, you still need to do the same things. I think that's really important, a really important thing to explain. But I suppose where I was angling at was entrepreneurs are renowned for being fast-paced, agile, being able to move from subject to subject, not subject to subject, but from thought to thought and different, pivot the business, change the business. As an executive, you are a little bit slower and a little change. I always talk, because I worked in corporate for 14 years. Changing the direction of a large corporate is like changing from a ship liner. It takes a long time to move it, where an entrepreneur can literally change their idea on a large section of their business in an afternoon. So with that as flagged to you, does that change your answer slightly?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's true. The bigger the ship, you turn the rudder, and you've got to wait for to be 10 miles or 15 miles before it actually you get any sense of turn. And it's true. The entrepreneur can change the direction of small business in an afternoon, but then they've got to continue in that path, and that can be rather more different. You can make decisions in an afternoon, but then you've got to follow it through. it's a bit like my metaphor would be a railway line. So you have a railway line going along and it's track. So a train on that has no choice. It's going to arrive at a certain destination.
Yeah.
Now, you can have points, and the points are going to be a few degrees. So the train can go off that. Now, if it goes off that, it's no longer heading where it was going, but it's only a small amount later, but it's got to keep going and keep going and keep going. The longer time it keeps going on that small angle, the further away from the end point it'll be. Yeah. And if it keeps on making those small changes, it will end up a very long way away. Now, of course, trains you can't put points at a right angle because the thing just comes off the track.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a good metaphor for any type of business. So I think that what's an interesting idea here is leverage. In other words, what is in a complex system like a business, what is the point where you can make the least amount of effort to get the most amount of result? That's right. A leverage point. And that's what I'm always looking for. And that's what I think always entrepreneurs and CEOs are looking for.
Thank you. How do we build resilience?
Well, resilience, I guess, is the ability to keep taking knocks and not allow it to knock you off course. So if you're... It's a funny question. Let me try and answer it this way. If you can arrange things so that you don't get knocked, you won't need resilience.
Right.
First option. Second option, lots of things going on and we can't avoid things going wrong, of course. Then you need to build up mental resilience in terms of being able to deal with, reframe and manage. We're into emotional intelligence again. Manage your emotions about that and other people. And physical resilience too, because the brain is part of the body, Brains don't work without bodies. Right. And increasingly we know that things like sleep, for example, it's really, really important that you get enough good quality sleep. And if you don't, then your decision-making, your focus, your concentration, and your ability to think can be very badly affected. So, it's not like, well, I haven't got time to rest or sleep or exercise because I've got all this important stuff to do. It's like, unless you do rest and sleep and exercise, you won't be so capable of doing that important stuff. It's going to be more difficult. It'll take you longer. So that's resilience there. And then, of course, you can get into anti-fragility with Nassim Taleb, which is about using the things that go wrong to make you stronger.
Right.
To be able to, so when they do go wrong, it does make you stronger. So like, when you exercise a muscle, it stresses the muscle, but then the muscle grows back more strongly and you can use it better afterwards. And that's a fascinating area. So if we had a couple of days, then
unfortunately, there is with all these things there are a closure, and we're coming to the end of the interview. Thank you for that answer on resilience, Joseph. So I asked the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They are quick-fire questions. They don't need a quick-fire answer. First one is, what's the best decision that you made?
Impossible. To go to live in Brazil, to be with Andrea. I was living in London and I moved out there. Lived in Brazil for 7-8 years.
What an amazing experience.
Came back.
Where were you in Brazil?
São Paulo.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
if you learn how to say no, know your priorities. You know, that with so many interesting, fascinating, and wonderful things going on that it's so easy to get sucked into them. You've got to say no, and you've got to say no even to things that you really like.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's helped you most in your career?
Well, if I go back to when I was first learning to train and but be like an entrepreneur in business and train and coaching, there was a man called David Gaster, who was an NLP trainer and ran a company in the UK that was a really, really fascinating and interesting and great person who kind of mentored me for some time. I owe him a lot of gratitude.
Awesome. Do you have any regrets?
Regrets? I have a few. Of course. Things don't go the way you like. And then, in the end, who knows? There are some things that I really wanted to happen, didn't happen, regretted. And then, 3 or 4 years after, I think, thank God that didn't happen. My God, that would have been a disaster. So I like to hold off on my regrets for a little while.
Okay, fair enough. What are you most proud of?
I guess the answer that comes to me right now is my daughter Amanda, who's 16 and who's doing wonderfully well in everything.
Amazing. What does legacy mean to you?
It means that after you die, you've left some footprints in the sand. You've left some footprints in the sand. You've walked along the beach. You've left some footprints in the sand, and they've pointed a way for people to follow if they want to and if they find it valuable, knowing that the tide is coming in anyway.
Awesome. Thank you. And lastly, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
We talk about website, email address, or what?
Yeah, website, email address, whatever you're happy, social media, whatever you're happy to share with.
I'm on LinkedIn, Joseph O'Connor Coach. I'm on Facebook, Joseph O'Connor Coach. I'm on LinkedIn, easy to look up. And website to start would be coachingthebrain.com.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Joseph. It was an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mark. It's great.